So it was 2017, and I was very angry all the time. I don't know if you remember 2017. There are a few things going on, a couple of, international norms and being violated left and right. There was funding being cut from things that, I don't know if you remember, used to have funding, and all kinds of rights were being threatened and taken away at times. Meanwhile, the rich were getting richer, the poor were getting poorer, and seemingly justice was nowhere to be found. And I found myself angry a lot. I also found myself strangely drawn to the Hebrew prophets. These were people that take up a big chunk of what the Hebrew scriptures, the first part of the Bible. And typically when you're reading through the Bible, I feel like we kind of breeze through these because they are archaic and hard to understand and sometimes graphic and weird with images and whatnot. And I know I personally have scooted on by them from time to time, but was made to feel, to realize their immediacy and their value when I read Abraham Heschel's book, The Prophets. It is the seminal work on the Hebrew prophets, and it completely changed the way that I saw them. And in particular, Amos. Amos became maybe my favorite book in the Bible. Amos was a shepherd from Tekoa, which means nothing to anyone here. He was a shepherd from Tekoa who spoke harsh words against the people in Samaria. Again, nothing. But what if I said he was an Uber driver from Omaha who went to Washington and brought a bullhorn and shouted from the Lincoln Memorial? Right? At that point, you start to relate to just some guy who has no qualifications, who just has seen the world from, I've been all around the world. I've traveled. I have driven people. I've talked to the normal people, the average people in this world, and all I see is Washington and Wall Street destroying this country and ripping the people to shreds. And meanwhile, I look around and I see these mega churches and these celebrity pastors that are making people just placated, making them feel good so they don't fight back. And he's just angry. And so I took it upon myself, because realizing that these names and places were lost to most of the modern readers, I started rewriting it. Just as a kind of personal devotional practice. So when you're reading it in your English Bibles and you read something like, woe to you, Bethel or Gilgal or Beersheba, that means nothing. But if I were to tell you that those were religious hotspots, so you can in your mind read it as woe to you, insert famous mega church or beautiful cathedral here. Or when you see woe to you, Samaria, means very little. But what if I told you that's the center of commerce and finance? That is the link between Asia Minor and the Greek world and the northern kingdom of Israel. So now you might start to hear Wall Street, New York, the center of capitalism. Or when you hear Jerusalem, we know Jerusalem now, but Jerusalem was kind of the bureaucratic machine of those days. And so you might hear Washington instead. And so I took a few weeks, and this was very cleansing for my soul, and I translated it, referencing the Hebrew as best as I can. I do have, I went to school for ancient languages, and I remember very little of my Hebrew, enough to be dangerous, enough to consult with it, not to translate directly from it. And I updated the language. I replaced things like swords and chariots with things like guns and tanks. And I replaced the cities and the countries, but making sure to make them equivalent. So there's a reason why I did X, Y, and Z. You know, for example, Amos is really upset with the people of Tyre, a city north of Israel, because of their role in the slave trade, because they were kidnapping people and selling them into slavery. So in my translation, Amos is railing against Boko Haram. You might remember in 2017, they were raiding villages and kidnapping people. They were, you remember the Bring Our Girls Back hashtag. It was all over social media, and all the boys that were turned into child soldiers and whatnot. And so all of them kept their original significance, but in our modern times. And then I changed the names, and this is the part that was really troubling. So instead of King Jeroboam, it is Donald Trump. Instead of the king's prophet, it's Sean Hannity. So it occurred to me as I was writing this that it was incredibly dangerous. And all I had to do was change the language a little bit, and suddenly I was writing a manifesto, essentially. The sort of thing that the FBI would pick me up for, and then you'd read about on CNN that, oh, he had a manifesto on his computer in which he talked about all of these people that he was going to target and the destruction of the cities and all of that stuff. And so I wanted to be able to share it, but how do I share something that could get me arrested? So I made a new email address that was not connected to my old email address, and then I used that email address to sign up for a website that lets you anonymously publish writings, and then I used an anonymous name. I said it was by echo, because I was imagining the echo of the spirit of the prophets echoing through time, that the echo has changed the sound of the original sound, but it is still reverberating from the original sound. So, like a year or two later, I was on a clergy Facebook group, and we were talking about how to preach from Amos 5, because it was showing up in the lectionary, this cycle of text that comes up every 3 years. And so millions of churches around the world were going to preach on Amos 5, and they were like, how do I do this? And I was like, oh, hey, I wrote a translation of this, and I copied and pasted it into that group to be like, feel free to use my translation. And I got no comments, no likes, not even like the angry react. I got nothing. So I was so confused, because I was like, well, I mean, it's not great, I guess, but it deserves something. So I went back to the group to look, and my comment had been deleted, not by the admin, but by Facebook. And I had gotten a strike against me for breaking the terms and conditions of Facebook by promoting harm and encouraging violence. So, okay, great. The Bible is going to get me kicked off of Facebook. So then I just posted a link to that website that I published it anonymously under. And within a day, that website was banned from Facebook. You can't even post from the main site itself. Like, they didn't just ban my little book, but they banned the whole website because it was deemed too dangerous to post on their platform. Right. And this is not some radical extremist manifesto, or maybe it is. But this chapter, Amos chapter 5, was being read in millions of churches across the world. Millions of churches were reading from this book. And I guarantee you that tens of millions of Christians around the world were yawning while it was being read, not realizing how incredibly dangerous the Bible really was. And the only thing standing in between them and the FBI was the names and the places. So, all that to say, I want Susie to come forward and read some of that for you. This is mostly from Amos chapter 5. There's a little bit from Amos 1 and a little bit from, I think, Amos 6 in there, just to add some context. If it tickles your fancy, I have the whole thing here. And at the end, there's a link and a QR code to get to the actual site itself. Feel free to peruse later. It's not safe for children.
The words of Amos, an Uber driver from Omaha, which he saw concerning the United States of America in the days of President Trump. Hear this word that I take up over you in lamentation. I find no joy in these words. O House of Washington, fallen no more to rise is Lady Liberty, forsaken on her land, with no one to raise her up. For thus says the Lord to the American family, seek me and live, but do not run to that megachurch. Do not seek out the counsel of celebrity pastors who worship their prosperity and cheat the poor. For they shall surely spend their waning years in prison, and their idolatrous temples shall become warehouses and Walmarts. Seek the Lord and live, or he will break out against you like fire, and it will devour your churches, with no one to quench it. Ah, you that turn sweet justice into moldy fruit, and crush righteousness into the ground. The one who is a midwife to the stars in their nebulae, who is their chaplain in death, and shepherds their wayward elements, to form worlds beyond imagining, who called life out of the seas and onto the land, and poured out the Holy Spirit into the hearts of intelligent apes. This one is the Lord. But they hate the ones who kneel and protest, and they despise anyone who supports their words with facts. Therefore, because you trample on the poor and oppress them for generations under a rigged economy, you have built mansions on sprawling estates, but you shall not live in them. You have planted pleasant vineyards, but you shall not drink their wine. Therefore, the prudent will keep their heads low in such a time, for it is a dangerous time to speak out. Seek good and not evil, that you may live. And so the Lord, the God of hosts, will be with you, just as you have said. Hate evil and love good, and establish justice in the streets. It may be that the Lord, the God of hosts, will be gracious to the remnant of America.
Thank you, Cece. The Bible is the good book, right? But it is not a safe book. The Bible was written almost exclusively by underdogs, by outcasts. Even the parts of the Bible, like the book of Kings, that talks about conquests and wars and whatnot. Israel and Judah are small little nations that are constantly being kicked around by their neighbors, like a little football. There really is, they say that history is written by the victor, right? I think the Bible is the exception, because the history in the Bible is written by the loser every time. It is written by the oppressed, by the freed slaves, by the people who are always smaller, always weaker, the people who are always under the boot of some foreign occupying force, the people who need to rely on God because they cannot rely on their own strength. In fact, that's kind of the recurring theme throughout the whole thing. Even Jesus, when he calls his disciples, he only calls the outcast and the people who should not be a part of this movement. He goes to the well-connected, to the well-educated, to the wealthy, and he gives them the same opportunity, but he doesn't wait around for them. Instead, he goes to the poor and to the broken. So it's important to remember when we're reading the Bible. The Bible has been used by powerful people to oppress for thousands of years, but it was not how it was written, and it's not how it should be read. So what is a prophet? In the biblical context, in the biblical sense of the thing, a prophet may tell the future, as we think of prophecy, but not because they have some sort of supernatural vision and they're able to do fortune telling, sort of seeing the threads of time and all of that. Prophets are simply people who see the world as it is and see where it's headed and can't believe that nobody else is freaking out as much as they are. That's all they are. They're people who see the present, who understand the present, and see the trajectory that we're going in and want to warn everybody because they can't get used to the fact that we are headed towards catastrophe. A prophet is a person who stands on the bow of a ship and sees that we're approaching an iceberg and cannot believe that the person that they just warned about the iceberg is playing shuffleboard. And is like, well, nothing I can do. We're either going to hit it or we're not. I might as well finish my game. And the prophet is standing up front going, will nobody turn this ship around? Please, I feel crazy. That's a prophet. I feel like some of you are prophets. Or at least some of you know prophets. All of you know prophets because you know some people from Open Table. One of the other things that prophets have in common is that they are very lonely people. Very lonely. It is extraordinarily lonely to be a prophet because you often feel like you are the only person who sees. You're the only person who gets it, who sees where we're going and wants to do something and say something about it. And so you get tired of telling your friends and your family over and over and over again, so you keep it inside. So you keep it locked up inside, and you just feel all your feelings and your angst, and this energy doesn't go anywhere. And like Jeremiah the prophet says, there is a fire in my bones, and I am weary from holding it. Most of the biblical prophets mention this at some point or another. Jeremiah is called the weeping prophet because he could not stop feeling these feelings. Elijah at one point just says to God, I'm the last one left. Just kill me now. That's one of my favorite stories in the Bible because he is at the end of his rope and he is alone and he sees himself as alone and he's hiding in a cave, and God's response to him is to give him a snack and let him take a nap. And when he wakes up in the morning, he's well rested and well fed, and he's suddenly feels a little bit more energized to go on and find the remnant of Israel that God has promised to him. So first thing I want you to know about prophets, those of you who may be a prophet or may know a prophet, is that you are not alone. You may feel alone, and it may be a lonely calling to constantly see what is wrong with the world and feel like you have to say something about it, but you are not alone. You are connected to thousands of years of tradition of people who have likewise seen where we are and where we're going and could not simply get used to the new normal. And in addition to just simply being a part of this great cloud of witnesses, just like what God said to Elijah in the cave, he said, you may feel alone, but there is a remnant out there. And I'm going to bring you to them. I will help you to find your people so you know you are not alone. So I need you all to know that you are not alone. And I hope that yesterday, I saw many pictures of many of you out at rallies and protests and whatnot yesterday, that you felt that feeling of being with others and knowing that you are not alone in your outrage, in your fear, in your anger. I think Evan Brandt said there were, 2,000 people at the Pottstown protest yesterday? 2,000 people in a borough of, 23,000? That's spectacular. That's 10%. I mean, they came from other places too, but that's huge. I mean, I'm seeing places in Idaho that had the largest gathering of their town's history. You are not alone. In fact, that is a pretty big part of these demonstrations, is building coalitions so you know you are not alone. Secondly, to the prophets out there and those who feel like they may be prophets, words matter. Words matter. I know it feels oftentimes like it doesn't, like you're just screaming into the void, or writing something on your computer is not actually making a difference in the world, that you're just some keyboard warrior and your words are meaningless, and you need to go out and do something physical because speaking words is not enough. I want you to know that words are actually incredibly powerful. And the Hebrew prophets are proof of this, that words have such power. Power to shift the national conversation, power to shift individual voices. You need not just to speak the one speech or write the one Facebook post or write that one great book that is going to convince everybody of the cause. You are never going to do that. If that is your metric for success, you will always fail. That is not the point of communication. The point is to be persistent, to be consistent, to keep speaking, to keep going. As Thomas Paine said, time makes more converts than reason. If somebody can repeat over and over and over and over again the very debunked lie that the former election was stolen enough times that now it has made its way into the Oklahoma elementary school curriculum, you too can speak truth enough times that it seeps into the subconscious of the people around you. You can speak truth enough times that the people around you don't know where that truth came from, but that it's there. You can speak truth so many times that the lies don't have a place to hide in people's subconscious anymore. You know, I found when I was teaching critical thinking at the seminary that one of the things I would do is I would just ask people questions about their deeply held beliefs. You know, the core beliefs about God and the world and themselves. And the more you ask a question of somebody about a core belief, and you ask them why and why and why and where it came from and where you learned this and where you heard it, the more you realize we don't know. We don't know where our deeply held beliefs came from. They just came to us. Most of the time, they came from repetition, from hearing something over and over and over again, which is also why we're very intentional with the words we sing on Sunday mornings. I don't want bad thinking and theology to seep into your minds, but only that which liberates, because we get enough messages otherwise, right? So I think we need to reconsider what victory looks like when it comes to our words. Because victory doesn't look like standing up and giving a big speech and convincing everybody in the crowd to your way, or standing up and being so convincing that the president says, you know what, you're right, I resign. People, have your power back. You know, we're going to disassemble the NSA and ICE and all of these sort of programs, all of our drones, we're going to put them to bed. No more. That's never going to happen. And if that is what you consider victory, then you will burn out quickly. It does not look like ending all oppression and creating perfect justice and liberty. Victory means building a larger coalition. Victory means making more people aware of what's happening. Victory means slowing down the harm that is happening, the harm that is being done to people and to our world. You prophets in our midst, you need to keep speaking. You need to keep reminding us, and you need to keep pushing us to see the iceberg that is coming when we would rather just finish our shuffleboard game. And finally, Amos said in this passage that the prudent will keep their heads low because it's a dangerous time to speak out. Now, I don't think he was just being sarcastic there. He being somebody with his neck firmly out. And by all accounts and oral traditions later, his head was separated from the rest of his body. But I think he means that everybody is not supposed to be a prophet. I know for a fact that everybody is not supposed to be a prophet. Not everybody in this room is supposed to hold a megaphone and to speak from a street corner. Not everybody's equipped for that work. Those who are should do it, and those who aren't should do what they are equipped to do. This work is about finding what is yours to do and then doing it. And knowing what's yours to do is not an excuse to do nothing. It's not an excuse to say, oh, well, I'm not a prophet. That's not really my spiritual gift. So you guys go and you do your little public action. You go chain yourself to a missile or whatever, and I will, I'll be here because it's not really my work. Your work is to know what it is and then to do it. So maybe you're not the one behind the megaphone, but maybe you're the one behind the spreadsheets, making sure that the movement can pay its bills. Maybe you're the one providing mental health services or buying dinner for people who are sticking their necks out. Maybe you are the one creating art or music or poetry or bringing the ineffable soul to the movement. Or maybe you're watching the kids so that those children's parents can follow their convictions without dragging their kids into the fray. I don't know what yours is to do right now, but I do know that it is to do something. And when you find it, you should do it with pride and conviction. And then don't feel guilty that you're not sticking your neck out there. Because that's not your job to do. Know what is yours, do it fully, and do it faithfully. Someone told me recently that supporting those who are acting out of their convictions will make activists of us all. And he was referring to a group of octogenarians who were making soup for some people who had been incarcerated after doing this big public demonstration. And he loved the idea of these 85-year-old grandmothers being activists when they never were early on. I like that. And I need that sometimes when I feel that nagging voice in the back of my head that tells me I'm not doing enough. You get that voice too? The one that says you're not standing up enough, you're not sticking your neck out enough, you're not showing up enough, you are not getting hit with the rocks enough, you are not enough. Sometimes I get that voice, and I need to be reminded of what is mine to do so that I can do that job more fully. So I think we all need to tap into that deep, deep history of prophets and know that we stand on their weathered shoulders. Those with words to speak must keep speaking, and everybody else must discern what is ours to do and do it faithfully. Because together is the only way that we make a dent in this awful machine and the only chance we have to survive. So what strikes you in this moment? What strikes you about this text or this message? What stands out? What is rising up in your heart? Maybe tell us what is yours to do in this moment if you feel so led.